If you want a little more texture in your arm knitted work, it's cool to use a twisted stitch instead of a plain stitch. You learned how to do the plain stitch in the infinity scarf video, but in this video, you're going to learn how changing your technique just a little bit will give you a twisted look to the smooth side of your work that gives you much more texture and depth. Let's get started. In the 30-minute infinity scarf video, we learned how to make a plain stitch. Now we're going to learn how to make a twisted stitch. It looks very similar to plain stitch, but the legs of the stitch are crossed. It makes it a little tighter, the fabric, and it gives you a little more visual interest, a little more texture to look at, and it's a very simple thing to do once you already know how to arm knit, which you already do. So, remember earlier I was talking about using your thumb as a guide? So for plain stitch, you would put the working yarn front to back over your thumb. For twisted stitch, we're going to put the yarn back to front over the thumb, and we're going to work the loops off from the right to the left in a very similar fashion. So I put the yarn back to front, I take the first loop off and drop it. I only have 7 on my arm this time, not 10. Now, I'm not going to twist the stitch. I'm going to put it on my left arm in the orientation it was in. So on this stitch, the working yarn, which is this one, is always next to my body, never away. So back to front, let me snug this up a little bit. So back to front over the thumb, pull the next loop off and drop it. Don't twist, put the loop onto the left hand. And we're going to work across in this fashion. Over the thumb, pull the loop over and drop it. Don't twist, put it on the left hand. And we're going to go all the way across. Now, you might remember when we were doing the plain stitch that the smooth side was towards our body and the knotted side was away. But now here, the knotted side is toward the body and the smooth side is away. So I'm going to put a couple more rows onto this because really you can't see the difference between one and the next without a few rows on there. It doesn't really show up in just one row. So once again, working from left to right, the yarn is going back to front over the thumb, pull the loop off and leave it. Put it on the right hand without twisting. So the thing to remember for twisted stitch is the working yarn is always, always, always towards your body. It doesn't move around. So over the thumb, pull the loop over, put it on the other hand without twisting. Over the thumb, pull the loop over and drop it, put it on the other hand without twisting. And as I said in the other video, you might notice I have a tendency to sort of snug up my row. I snug up my stitches after every stitch. It's just a habit. It's a rhythm you will get into as you keep going. Okay, so once again, the knotted side is towards me, the smooth side is away. I'm going to do just a couple more rows. Okay, let me do just one more. Yarn towards me. The working yarn is always towards me in the twisted stitch. Okay, now I'm just going to take this off my hand so you can see it. What we have here is a piece of fabric made in twisted stitch with 3 strands of green woolly Thick and Quick. And then we have the same yarn, the same amount of strands in the plain stitch. What I wanted to show you is the difference between the two, which is subtle, but really does make a big difference in a project. In the plain stitch, we have each of these loops is a stitch, and their legs are not crossed. That's what we say in knitting also, whether the legs are crossed or not. So there's a stitch, and the bottom, the legs of the stitch are side by side. So that is plain stitch. In the twisted stitch, you have one stitch, but one leg crosses over the other leg. It makes the stitch a little tighter. It gives you some visual interest, particularly like with a Tweety yarn. And it's just one more little trick to have in your bag of tricks. So this is the twisted stitch, and this is the plain stitch, and you can see the difference in these two pieces. Don't forget, you can always get more information at armknitting.com. That's arm-knitting.com. And for twisted stitch projects, as well as several others, you can always get simple and stylish arm knitting from Design Originals written by yours truly. Thanks so much for stopping by.